Hi everyone and welcome to Friday Night Live. Tonight we'll be continuing to look at the Beatitudes series, so that involves a 15-minute talk on here, and then we'll be heading over to the hangout after on Zoom. So get involved in the chat throughout. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them on and we'll explore some of the answers during the hangout. If you've not yet received the password for that or the login details, then just pop a message on the live chat now and one of the youth team will be in touch. So as those of you who've been following along might be aware, we're currently looking at the Beatitudes. Now, these are in Matthew and at the start of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. So if you have a Bible, I'd like you to turn to Matthew 5 verse 6. In this verse, Jesus says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied." So let's take that first chunk of that. Those who hunger and thirst. Let's try and think of a time where you have been mega hungry or mega thirsty. For me, I can think about a time when I was a student. I woke up late one day, was having a hectic morning, all the trains were out of whack and it was just rush. Got to work to put my lunch in the fridge, and of course I'd left my lunch at home and my dinner, and because I was in such a rush I hadn't even managed to pick up breakfast. So I knew that it was going to be a difficult day, and I was already feeling sorry for the level of hunger that my colleagues were receiving. And you might be thinking, come on, Abby, simple solution, go buy something, ask someone for something. But I was a student, I felt a little bit uncomfortable. Obviously in the rush of everything, I'd left my purse at home, I didn't have any way of paying on my phone, anything like that. So, totally myself to blame. But that whole day, my belly was rumbling to the point where at the end of the day, it just was aching and I was not a good person to be around. But yeah, the main thing was that ache and that just hunger that I felt. And to top things off, I was having to hand out dinner trolleys, lunch trolleys to the patients, which was lovely, but I just could stare at their chips and smell them and think, oh, if only. And so I got home thinking, oh, I'm just gonna have to pop a bit of toast on, and lo and behold, my housemate had ordered from the chippy and she couldn't eat the whole portion herself. So I got home and that feeling of hunger that I'd received all day was satisfied just like that, and whew, that was a good feeling. Now, in regards to that, you might be thinking about a time when you were hungry. Try and remember how that feels. It might be you forgot your lunch one day at school, or you forgot your money so you couldn't buy lunch. Whatever it may be, I'm sure all of us out there have experienced, I'm sure all of us part of this have experienced some form of hunger. And you may be able to remember that ache. Now, it's obviously not a great memory. The thought that comes out after, when you fulfill the hunger, might be a good memory, but the actual hunger aspect of it isn't good. And Jesus isn't saying here that it's, you're blessed to be hungry and thirsty, because we need to make sure we keep it in context and look at what comes next. Because being hungry, Jesus doesn't want people to hunger. In fact, he wants people to help the hungry. But as the other Beatitudes we've explored, it starts by focusing on something that we can understand and turns that into a lesson about a particular aspect. So we've looked at blessed are the poor, blessed are the hungry and thirsty. But here, he's not talking about hungry for food, thirsty for drink, but having the feeling of hunger for wanting to be righteous. So, I guess now we have to figure out what righteousness means. Effectively, it's putting right to wrong. And in this relationship, Jesus is talking about right relationships, doing right by someone, being good to that person. Now, we're created to be in a right relationship with God, but also with others and with the world. So those who hunger and thirst for righteousness ache for those right relationships. If you have got a Bible, we're just going to dig into Ezekiel 18 verses 5 to 9. Now, I'll be using the Message translation, so it might be a little bit different to what is in, depending what translation you have. And in this, it just explains that little bit about what a righteous person is. Here we go. If a man is righteous and does what is just and right, they live well, treat others fairly, keep good relationships, won't eat at the pagan shrines, won't worship the idols so popular in Israel, won't seduce a neighbour's spouse, won't indulge in casual sex, won't bully anyone, won't pile up bad debts, won't steal, won't refuse food to the hungry, won't refuse clothing to the naked, won't exploit the poor, won't live by impulse and greed, won't treat one person better than another, but lives by statutes and faithfully honours and obeys my laws. This person who lives upright and well shall live a full and true life. So there, it's a very similar thing. Those who live righteously are fulfilled, which the verse obviously goes on to say, which we'll explore a little bit more of in a bit. So there we can see that righteousness is a sense of justice. It's wanting to do right by others. And by Jesus telling us to that those people who are hungry and who hunger and thirst for righteousness are blessed, he's inviting us into that. Now, with everything going on at the moment, there might be something that you've noticed in the world and that you're really longing for right to be brought to that situation. It might be the increased awareness about abuse among households, those who are living in poverty, an increased awareness of how the isolated feel, feeling that those in bad housing situations, you all have amazing gifts, and through all of you, I'm sure that hunger and thirst will be different for a lot of you, but there may be some similarities there. And hearing about these things in the news, you may have a longing for them to be different. And if that is the case, Jesus is saying that you are blessed. You are blessed because it disturbs you and you have a want to do something about it. You notice that things aren't right. So let's look at it in a relationship sense. So those who call themselves Christians and they're in a relationship with God seek to be like Jesus. Now, Jesus, obviously, epic example of a guy, stood up for people, loved people who seemed unlovable, did what he was supposed to, and didn't do what he wasn't supposed to. He was righteous. And just like that hunger, it can feel a bit uncomfortable when actually we do mess things up, and we can realise that we haven't done right in a situation, we haven't done right by someone, we've noticed something that isn't right and we've just sat and been okay with it. Now, God isn't saying here that you now have to punish yourself and that's it, you're not going to be blessed, you're not going to be fulfilled. But it's important that we recognise that those things where we haven't been longing for and seeking righteousness. And in that situation, we need to come to God and repent for those things. So for our relationships, let's start with God. So we know that sin separated us, but because of Jesus' death and resurrection, we're able to have a right relationship with God if we go to him and welcome him into our lives. Now, we know that God is righteous because he does right by his promises and by his words. And if we are a Christian, then we should seek to mimic this and bring a bit of the kingdom to those around us. So we should be not only seeking a right relationship with God, but a right relationship with others. Now, how do we do this? You can support one another, love one another, be gracious, treat others how you wish to be treated, do right by them where you notice that there might be a little break, sit and try and figure that out. And there might be a relationship right now that you can think of where something wasn't right and righteousness wasn't met, either because of something maybe you did, something the other person did. It might have been a miscommunication, which can so easily happen at the moment, and with everything being via social media, and it can be a lot harder to get those relationships right. And it might be that there's a specific relationship on your heart right now, and tonight is an opportunity to recognise that and do something about it. Like I said, we'll be hanging out on the Hangout after Zoom, and there'll be loads of youth leaders, loads of your friends on there who would love to sit with you and pray with you about those things. So not only do we long for righteousness, but we can act righteously. And when we long and act with righteousness, as it continues to say in the verse, we bring God's kingdom, and righteousness is fulfilled. It is satisfied. God is able to satisfy it. So, like I said earlier, there may be things that you thought during this time that actually you're longing and you've got that hunger to do something about, to act. And for some of you, it might be going on mission trips abroad and doing things there. You may feel real calling in that, or just that aching that it's just not right. And for some of you, it may be wanting to go out and help disadvantaged people. It might be wanting to tutor people in your school who aren't able to get the support that they need. It can look different for all of us. And actually, even though we can be thinking those things right now, it can be very hard to put that into action because of obviously all the limitations that of staying inside and keeping our distance from others. So although we might not be able to act and do those things right now, I encourage you not to just drop them, but actually this is a great time to start preparing and planning those things and thinking how you can act righteously and what you can do. But as you may have seen on social media, another great way of sort of dipping your toes in and seeing what it's like is the church is collecting items for women in Birmingham who've been affected by trafficking, exploitation and domestic violence. Now, this gives us an opportunity to act righteously by providing for those in need. You can maybe just encourage your parents to drop donations off, or if you're able to, buy something and drop them off yourself. But you can also pray for God to make all things right. So to summarise, with hunger, think back to that day on my shift. If you had seen me, heard my tummy rumbling, you might have thought, she's a bit unlucky. But if you knew that big portion of chips was coming at the end of the day, then maybe you'd think I was blessed. And here Jesus is saying something similar. If we long for righteousness with God, with our friends, our family in the world, that can hurt and that can ache. But by continuing to pursue that, God can truly fulfill the righteousness and satisfy those longings. So before we move on to the hangout afterwards, it should be a great time to reflect on some questions, and I've mentioned some of them throughout this, and maybe you can have a pen and paper and just jot some things down, if there's something that immediately prompts you, and we'll love to chat with you after. So one of the things I mentioned earlier was where potentially relationship that you might be part of righteousness is missing from. And if that is the case, then write that person's name down, write the relationship, write where righteousness is missing. You might also be feeling that there are areas in your life where no matter how hard you try, things just aren't right, they just don't go right. And the answers come to Jesus. He is able to make those things right. And if that's you, we would love to pray with you at the end. And also, what is it that you are hungering and longing for right now? And how can you act to help this? Can you prepare things that when lockdown is over that you can do? Whatever it may be, this is a great time just to explore and look into that. So I'm just going to finish off by praying, and then we're going to head on over to the Hangout Zoom thing, and looking forward to seeing you all there. Yeah, Lord, I just thank you for our time together this evening. I thank you that you are able to satisfy us when we look to you and learn from your teachings and just really try to mimic the person you were. Lord, where we may have relationships where righteousness hasn't been met and that might have hurt some of us, Lord, I just pray for healing into those broken relationships, and may you just show us how to act rightly in those and how to just bless other people within our relationships. And Lord, please just bless our time over on Zoom. Amen. See you in a bit.